Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jos presenting Pro Booth Tips and New Merchandising.
Hello, hello. So, let's talk about a booth. Sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble with my touchpad, so I'm gonna have to use the mouse. So, let's talk about booths at events. But first, let me introduce the love of my life, Popcorn, our little dog. Of course, I love my wife equally much, if not more, and we live together in Berlin. Enough about me. Oh, and I work for SUSE, obviously, for those who don't know me. Now, I'm going to talk about geekos, lots of them. And I'm going to have three main subjects that I'm going to talk about in the next 30-35 minutes. It's first about why we have a booth, and second, how to have a booth. And then I'm going to talk about the new booth merchandising that is at some point going to come from us to you. Our booth. Why do we have a booth? Well, obviously we have a booth at technical conferences usually to to inform people there about what we do. Right? We target newbies, people who don't know much about open source and free software and are just curious about that whole, penguin thing and come and check it out. We target people who are already Linux users, who know what they're doing, maybe have, done their first step in even compiling or programming. And the third group we're targeting are people who really know what they're doing. They maybe are contributors from other projects, they have been around free software, and they, of course, already know openSUSE. Now, let's start with the beginners. The thing is, with beginners, we just want them to try out openSUSE. That's the main thing. If they try it out and they don't like it, that's okay. We just want them to try it. We try to help them with that. We answer the questions they have. We tell them, of course, why they should be trying openSUSE. But that's why we're there for beginners, just the basics. Maybe we help them install it. Maybe we just give them a DVD, or we tell them where to download it. The more knowledge Linux users are people who often come to our booth with questions. They already know openSUSE, they might be using it, or they're using another distro and they're having some problem or another, or they just wonder, why would I try out openSUSE and they haven't tried it in a long time, or they come and say, look, I read an article on LWN about OBS, what the heck is it, what are you guys doing there? So we're mostly here to answer their questions and help them with the things they're trying to do. And last but not least, we have the hackers, the developers, and the free software people. Now, again, think about people who contribute to other projects, people who maybe are contributing already to Debian or Ubuntu, or people who work on GNOME or KDE or LibreOffice or smaller projects. Now, we are here for them for two reasons. First, we want basically to be there. We want to show them that we're here, the geekos are still relevant, we're doing cool stuff. So we want to tell them all the interesting stuff that we're doing. Maybe they won't be using it, but when somebody asks them about this openSUSE thing, at least they won't tell the other person that openSUSE doesn't exist anymore, right? We just need them to see us, just need to be there for them. And second, we want them actually to be positive about us, know that we matter. Even if you're an Ubuntu user, we do stuff that's interesting, be it OpenQ&A, be it OBS. Okay, we would like those people to still recognize that we are doing interesting things. This is part of being open. Right, I'll get to that later, but we're an open community, we work with others. We have no problem with Fedora and Ubuntu people. As a matter of fact, we would like them to like us too. And that's, I think, a good thing, and I like it if we try to communicate this to people. I think that's important. And of course, if people want to get involved, hey, that's awesome, right? But you might not get so many people at conferences involved in your project, and hey, that's fine. Okay, we're there very much to evangelize, just get the word out. People will probably only get involved after they've followed the mailing list for a while. So it's very unlikely you'll talk to someone at a conference a week later, they're on the mailing list, and 3 weeks later they're committing packages in OBS. It's just not how it works. You might talk to someone, and next year maybe they are committing packages to OBS. There's a gap there, so I also think you shouldn't expect too much. Now, those are the people. Let's talk about the work we do. Okay, let's talk about the basics of having a booth. Now, how to represent openSUSE properly. At the end of this part, I will share a couple of tips. I think one of the, yes, yeah, that's the touchpad. I am sorry. So I think one of the most important things about openSUSE is the first letters. Okay, open. We're a very open community. You know, we don't always have to be hugging everyone, although I personally think that's a good thing to do. But I think the being friends that I mentioned is important. It's part of who we are. We like to work with others. We like to be open and collaborative. So especially I think also for the experts and for the newbies and for the advanced users, this matters. Okay, our reputation as a project. Now, when you set up a booth, you should reflect this. I think this is how you should not do it. It's a traditional booth. You put a table, you put people behind it, often with the laptops facing themselves, which is, you know, well, the back of a laptop is usually quite pretty, but it's not very useful. And that's where you go and sit. This is a picture from Marcus Meister from openSUSE conference last year. Now, this is a booth, how you should do it. You make an open space, put the tables on the sides, and now people can come in and actually talk. And here you see, well, here you see basically the booth at Linux Fest Northwest in action. Right? This is a good booth, in my opinion. And, well, there are a couple of more examples of, like, you know, create an open space. Here we have, like, some room where people can sit and, you know, listen to booth talks. I'll come to that later. This works, right? Now, here people sit down. This is actually not an example of the bad stuff of people hacking at the booth, which you shouldn't do. But there is a presentation happening, I think, to the left here, so it's not as bad as it looks. But it does bring us to the point of don't sit at your booth and hack there. Unless you do it on a big screen as a demonstration. That's fine, that's cool. But don't fill up the booth with people sitting there and hacking, because that's not very inviting and open. I know it's real hard to not do it, by the way. I mean, I find it hard as well for myself, but it's really important not to do it. Find a hack space. Most conferences have room for it.
Another thing people like to do is leave their shit at the booth.
Yeah, Hannah just added that people like to leave their stuff at the booth. Yeah, well, often you can put it under a table or something, but don't make a big mountain in the middle where you're supposed to stand. Okay, so this is about the kind of the setup, the design of the booth. Try to make it open and, you know, don't sit behind a table. That's just not a very inviting thing to do. If you sit behind a table, people really have to go to you, and they have this distance between you and they have to reach over it, right, mentally. This is just not nice. If it's open and you're standing in front and people come, that's a lot closer and easier. Yeah, I could do that too, but I want distance between you and me, Hannah. So, the second thing, I would like you to represent openSUSE well. And that has multiple parts, but I think an important thing is spreading our culture, showing who openSUSE is. I already talked about showing the open part, but I think this slide really represents a couple of cultural things that openSUSE has that especially experts actually will usually find desirable, because these are things that, well, make us different from other distros, and I think in a lot of points very good. Whether it's better, it's, I guess, up to each opinion. But we have documentation that explains these things, right? I don't go into it now because we're a bit strapped on time, but if you want, I could go and explain this a little deeper. And of course, you're there telling people about what we do, our technology, how we work, the open build service, Tumbleweed, SUSE Studio, all the cool technologies that come out of our project. And obviously, you need to talk about this. And we include, with the current package that we send out, we include a letter with information about these things. So you actually already have some of these arguments and talking points. And the plan is, of course, for us to create more of it. There already is a lot more on the wiki. So there's a lot of information that if you don't follow openSUSE via Planet openSUSE and news at opensuse.org every day, which, you know, not everybody does, you can still get a lot of important information because we have it on the wiki, especially for our ambassadors. And I'm fairly certain most people have no idea that we do that. Now, let's go for some of the pro tips. There are two posters from Linux Stack, and they both represent some of the things that make a booth, well, make the difference between a good and a really good booth. Yeah? Now, tip 1, if you have things to give away, and you usually have, it's a nice idea to ask for a little donation for each of them, and then donate that money to the event where you are at. The events like that very much, which usually means next year they'll give you a better, bigger, or better positioned booth. Hey, points for that. And the audience likes it very much too, because you're supporting the event they're going to, and they're going there because they think it's cool. So you score points both with the organization and with the visitors. Obviously, if you can use the money yourself very well, then of course you can use it for that as well. But this, yeah, we have given away a fair amount of beer at events for like €1 each, and then give the money to the organization. And that's, well, you know, you support the event. It's good for everyone. A big win-win, I think. Second thing here on the right, you see a little booth talks schedule. So this is something we've done at a couple of events now, and it's usually very much appreciated. You can organize little simple talks about various subjects at the booth. Now these talks are usually related to simply what the people at the booth there know about. Okay? They don't have to be about openSUSE. Actually, I would say, don't bother. Make them about GNOME or KDE or LibreOffice or things that actually attract people who don't really per se care about openSUSE, because you still get people to your booth outside of our own openSUSE fan group. So it's also a way to widen the scope. It usually doesn't attract a whole lot of people, but honestly I think it is way better to have a chat with 5 people than with 50, because with 5 people you can respond to their questions, you can actually have a good conversation. With 50, well, you can only do one-way communication with that. So I think this is really a good way to attract people to your booth who would otherwise not come, and have quality interactions with them. And of course, conference organizations love it if you do this stuff. If you go to them, you know, you say, look, we're going to do this thing at our booth where people can come, and we give a little presentation 3 times a day, you know, just 20 minutes each time. Can we hang up posters to show that we are doing this? They will allow you to hang up posters all over the place. Oh, that's awesome, right? People will know about the booth and go there. So this is promo, good promo, all around. By the way, talking about hanging up posters, this is really a good thing to do. Hang up posters that say, where is your booth and what is there to do, to see maybe there are things you give away. Or you just say, look, our booth is here. Find it in hall 7B area 2. If you ask the organization before, they usually say yes. And very often, to my big surprise, you're the only team that does it. Other booths almost never hang up posters, which makes the whole place look very green, which is really cool. And the fourth is, you know, and that's already what I said with the talks, connect with other projects. Okay, ask the KDE people for a couple of, I don't know, things for your booth. Ask the GNOME people. If there is no LibreOffice stand, but one of you sometimes works with LibreOffice, try and get some LibreOffice things at your booth. This connecting with other projects, again, brings people to the booth who might not be super interested in openSUSE, but by coming to the booth, you get a chance to talk to them. And this really works. Richard?
I mean, just to give an example, I mean, we had that happen a few stems ago, just after the GNOME 3 release.
Can you give a sec for the... yeah.
Sorry, just to give another example of that happening at FOSDEM a couple of years ago, we had just after the GNOME 3 release, the GNOME 3 booth ended up sending most of their people to ours for demonstration because our screens were more impressive, our booth was more impressive, and we were giving away beer. So we ended up with quite a lot of people being sent our way.
Well, this year at Linux Stack, you can probably see on the right the Fedora Beefy Miracle logo from their release. What we did was we collaborated with Fedora. We had beer, they had hot dogs, and basically everybody who went to the Fedora booth came then to us for a beer. I mean, come on, can you do anything smarter than that? I think it was brilliant. It wasn't my idea, well, it was kind of... We had a beer with a couple of Fedora people. That's where good ideas come, okay? So really, work with others. Other projects, even Ubuntu and Fedora, why not? You know, I think this is part of how openSUSE is different from other distros, because most of them don't like this very much. You know, they like to be in their own circle, but why? You know, I think we can be proud of our Geeko. We're doing great stuff. We don't have to hide from other people and keep doing it. So this is really something. You can make a difference with that. Just be open and work with others. People appreciate it. They really notice when you don't do that, when you're like, you know, in your own little group. I mean, this, yeah. Any more points or questions? If not, let's move on. I have a few minor tips about the actual talking to people. Yeah, I already mentioned about 50,000 times to be open and friendly, etc. And it helps to have your story ready, of course. Again, that's why you have the talking points. 3 extra tips here. Okay, the first one is ask questions to draw people in. So when you're not sitting behind your table, because I told you not to do that, but when you're standing in front of the table and somebody walks by and looks at the flyers and other things, ask them, do you use openSUSE? And they'll, well, say yes or no, and in both cases you have something to talk about. Done. It's not difficult, right? Asking questions works really well, just to start a conversation. And the second thing is, you know, don't just do a sales pitch. You can do a short sales pitch, but don't keep talking. Try to figure out what they want. What do they use their computer for? Basically, keep asking questions and see if openSUSE can help them. And again, be open. If they're looking for something that openSUSE cannot provide, tell them to go somewhere else. I think that's fine. Be helpful. At least they will have a good memory of openSUSE. While if you sell them something that we can't provide, you give them a bad experience. So it's better to tell people, look, we don't really have that very well. You know, if they say, I want a live CD and I want to have all the multimedia codecs included, well, you can tell them SUSE Studio, you can build it yourself. But if they're not up for that, tell them to go to Mint, okay? At least, again, they have a good memory of us. And yeah, so be it. If we don't do that, we don't do that, right? It's important to be honest. And the third tip is, don't waste your time on negativity. If people come to you and say, ah, everything sucks, you know, I hate green, it's a terrible color, and everything breaks when I put it in my computer, of course you should try to help them, but people can complain for hours. It doesn't help anyone, especially not you and your motivation, but also the other people who are probably around. So when people come to you and it's all negative, 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 tell them, look, I'm really sorry about it. Please ask on the forums or ask on our mailing list. I mean, help them to find the forums, help them to find the mailing list, but don't spend too much time on negativity. There are other people watching and listening, and there's much better stuff you can do. If someone is a hater, well, they say haters gonna hate on the internet, and the internet is always right. Now, I already saw that we have to hurry up, so I'm going to skip on these, unless you really think there are important tips that should be shared and that I skipped on. Guys, until how long do I have? Because I thought I had until 3:30. Or, I mean, 3:30 initial time. Can you check in the schedule? I have to stop now? Okay, well then we miss entirely on the merchandising. I'm sorry. Are you sure? Okay. Yeah? Is that okay? Okay, well if it's really okay. Okay, if you're really okay with it, then I will try and do the merchandising part now, quickly. Because of course we're at SUSE, we have been working on new merchandising, and I think that's quite worth, you know, showing. So let me see. So, openSUSE merchandising, that's what I want to talk about now. First I want to say our artists are doing awesome work. That's why you see pretty pictures in my slides. And I want to give a lot of points for that. Now, I'm going to quickly talk about where we currently are, where we are going, how we're going to go there, and then you all can tell me how you like it or dislike it. Currently, we're serving up about 100 events all around the world. Yeah? We're talking about, you know, huge events with 10,000 people, but we're also talking about classrooms where an ambassador goes and gives a talk and then hands out some DVDs. So it's all kinds of events. Now, to support this, SUSE until recently had a demand-based system. Yeah? Ambassadors tell us, like, look, I'm going to give a talk there and there. Can you please send us some stuff? And then we put DVDs in the box, and, well, whatever we can find in the office that seems to fit with the event. Sometimes we have good things, sometimes we don't. It depends on the event. And we send it to them. Now, this is not really perfect. It's a lot of work for us to check if the request is real. Sometimes you get an email from somebody saying, can you send me 1 DVD? Then you have to explain that, no, we cannot do that. The minimum amount is 100. When you get an email then that a week later that says, can I then get 100? Are you sure 99 of them aren't going to be thrown away? It's really hard to figure that out. So these things, you know, it's hard to check. And when you send DVDs, I mentioned it earlier to a couple of people talking here, when you send a box of 100 DVDs to a place, for example, in South America or in Asia, it can easily cost 500 or even 1,000 euros. Now, 100 DVDs costs about 7 euros, and you spend 700 euros on shipping it. That's a little bit insane, obviously. And it's something we have been doing a lot, so that's not really efficient, we think. So in short, I mean, we can't really plan what we're doing. We don't always do what we want to do because we don't send stuff in time. We don't really know how well we are doing what we do because we don't get a lot of feedback. In other words, we're not very happy with it, and honestly, I think a lot of you aren't either. And all this is being done by SUSE, because the community, it's, yeah, you ask us stuff, then we have to figure out if we give it or not. We often have no real good base to decide on, so there's some randomness there as well. It's not nice. So we have been thinking a lot and talking to a lot of people, including the ambassador team and ambassador welcoming team and other people, about how can we do this better. Now, let's talk about that. It would be nice if we would know the events in advance. It would be nice if we would send good stuff, even if we send a little bit less of it. And it would be good if we would be sure that when we send stuff, it will actually be used. And it would be really nice if this would actually be planned by the community so that we know that we don't send it to places where it's not needed. So this is what we're going to try. I made a process picture, I'm going to skip it. The plan, the detailed proposal. What we've done initially is to make a list of events. Okay, and I've been working on this for over a year. It's based on what we have in our wiki. It's based on the things I've been asking on the mailing list, and I'm talking to people in person. I know the list is still not complete because there are way, way more events that could be put on. But at some point, I can't keep looking and hoping that I find something else. So I finally said, okay, this is the list. I went over it. And I looked at how many people that came, how big the event is, what the audience is, and all these things. Again, I asked a lot of people, can you tell me how many people come here? How important is this? What kind of people are there? Students, businessmen, etc., etc., etc. Based on all that information, I said, okay, these events we really need to go to with a couple of people from SUSE, right? Big events like FOSDEM, for example. Then we looked at other events and said, okay, this is the kind of event that needs to have a good openSUSE presence. So we need to send a big box there with materials. And other events, we send a smaller box, or we have to support it in other ways, like, for example, with money, and the smaller events especially. So after that list, I started to